Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Just the other day, Goldman Sachs circulated a note about the Irish budget, and the note mentioned the remarkable degree of consensus that exists in Ireland about the necessity for budget adjustments. And I just want to quote one sentence. And it said, although the government, the opposition and the trade unions continue to debate where and how the knife should fall, there is little or no dispute about when and how much the budget should be cut. Now, you had a remarkable consensus available to you from Fine Gael, from the Labour Party and indeed from the trade union movement. You would never imagine your party, Fianna Fáil, giving such an advantageous start to any government. This could have been a consensus budget. It was a classic we all jumped together moment, an opportunity for burden sharing by everyone, but you blew it today. Your budget is straight out of the Leona Helmsley budget school, that burden sharing, like taxation, is just for the little people. So, in your budget today, social welfare for carers is down by about 830. For widows and widowers under 66, it's reduced by €830 a week. For lone parents, for people on disability, even for blind people, there's a reduction of €830 a week. And I'll tell you this, I think you have some nerve walking in here, Minister, to quote Ted Kennedy, the absolute champion of the poor and of fairness in America, who was not afraid, like Warren Buffett and like Bill Gates, to say that rich people in a republic should pay their fair share of the tax. Your contribution from the wealthy in the budget today, you estimate at €55 million. That's about 1.5% of the total budget adjustment package of €4 billion. So that's where we have fairness and burden sharing. It's the cleaner working in the public services who has 2 children who will be paying the bulk of the burden sharing and carrying the bulk of it, although undoubtedly she'll be delighted to have a job, and I'm sure you won't stop reminding her of that. You know, I must say, you never really mentioned NAMA or the banks in your budget. Last month we had NAMA, and you know, in many ways, NAMA was the bailout of the guilty who drove this economy, helped and abetted by Fianna Fáil to ruin. So today, you know, we have the slaughter of the innocents. And I was listening to Ryan Tubridy this morning, and he was looking for Christmas hit singles. And, you know, Fianna Fáil's hit single for Christmas is going to be, I saw NAMA killing Santa Claus, because parents who've suffered a cut in child benefit, it's to pay actually, and they should know it, it's to pay for the bailout of the banks and the developers. That's where the hole is in the budget. That was the €7 billion extra you had to borrow this year, 4 for Anglo and the 3 into the National Pension Reserve Fund that went to our 2 big banks. So let's not be under any illusion. The kind of ghost at the feast, the unmentionable, is the bailout of the banks and the developers. And, you know, I'm really glad, Minister, that you did come in here with your tail between your legs and reverse the half-point rate increase in VAT. That was the single most disastrous action that you took in your budget, the early budget for 2009. You know, that was the half-point mistake that sent shoppers scurrying over the border to buy and queue up, whether it was for Asda in Enniskillen or it was for Sainsbury's in Newry. And, you know, looking at the other reductions that you have in the budget today, you know, the decrease in the cost of drink and the scrappage scheme for cars. you know, reading it and looking at all the leaks in the papers, I was thinking about it. You're cutting the cost of drink, you're cutting the cost of cars. It's a kind of a Top Gear budget, isn't it? It's a sort of a lad's budget that Jeremy Clarkson would really like. Cut the price of drink and cut the price of cars. It's not that doing that isn't going to stimulate. It's just that budgets are about choices. And your choices are to impose the burden of pain on families with children, on people on social welfare who are aged under 66 years of age. And you know, the burden sharing, as I said, that you have in relation to taxation measures on higher paid people amounts to less than 1.5% of the total of the 4 billion adjustment. It is a heartbreaking time for parents of young graduates and for apprentices in many trades. And the saddest part of your own pre-budget outlook was your acceptance that under your budget, unemployment would go up next year by another 75,000 people. So, you know, in agriculture, employment is down by 15%. Whole classes of nurses have departed to hospitals in the UK and elsewhere, all trained at a huge cost to us. Newly qualified architects, solicitors, civil engineers, trainee teachers, construction apprentices, you know, they're all finding it impossible to get a job at the moment at home. If that is the fate of those with qualifications, how much worse is it for the early school leaver and the young unemployed? I mean, this is really a nightmare scenario for the individuals affected and their families. It is no less a nightmare for the whole country. And there is one lesson that history teaches. Youth unemployment, unemployment among people under 25, it causes permanent scars. The effects last a lifetime, and economic recovery is no guarantee that the scars can be healed. Employment has to be the main focus of policy. We accepted in the Labour Party the 4 billion adjustment so as to protect our country's international credit rating and make the cost of borrowing as cheap as possible for the country. We added an additional 1.8 billion in our document to allow scopes for a jobs initiative. You are so obsessed with rescuing banks at any cost that you cannot face the awesome jobs and unemployment challenge that ought to engage your attention and that of your ministers night and day. John B. Keane wrote a great play, Many Young Men of 20 Said Goodbye. Today, it's many young men, and young women too, who will be saying goodbye after Christmas because they're trying to make decisions. And people know that all over rural Ireland and in every town and city. Is that the legacy you want from your time in office? You claim to have a smart economy strategy. Where is it now, a full year after its launch? You've devoted enormous energy and resources to protecting the property economy through NAMA, but there hasn't been a fraction of that energy devoted to the knowledge economy. Where are the internships that can offer a bridge to young graduates and apprentices? Because if somebody who's just qualified becomes unemployed for a long period of time, essentially they are really difficult to reintegrate into the labour force, because just when they come out of college they could get no job experience, and by the time the recession is over, 2 or 3 years later, other younger graduates have come in to take up the experience. So it is a real problem, the way you're treating young unemployed people. And the measures in the budget today hardly touch the surface of the issue. I want to talk a little bit about child benefit. You flagged this very well, and obviously you decided to make this particular cut in relation to women and children the centrepiece and the heart of your cutting strategy, aside from the reduction in public service pay. And I just want to recall a day in early May in 2007, and Professor Bertie Ahern had called an election. And, you know, Brian Lenihan had an early morning job to do. It was a Tuesday morning in May 2007. It was the monthly child benefit payment day, and it wasn't just any ordinary payment day. That day in May 2007 was a bumper payment day. The previous December, the other Brian, Mr. Cowan, then Minister for Finance, had made a special budget day announcement. Child benefit was to increase in 2007 by €10 a month per child. Not immediately in 2007. Mothers would have to wait a few months. They would have to wait until May to get the increase, by coincidence, the election month. So mums in the post office queue in Blanchardstown were looking forward to a bumper payment. And to make the day extra special for them, there was the Minister for Children then, Brian Lenihan, walking along the queue, shaking hands, kissing babies. I'm not sure about that bit, I didn't see you doing that. And reminding everyone that Fianna Fáil was the party that looked after child benefit. Something to remember on election day a few weeks later, and they did. That day in May 2007, you, Brian Lenihan TD, were cock of the Blanchardstown Post Office walk. Now today, what have you to say to those mothers? I can tell you, Brian Lenihan, that Mná na hÉireann are not that easily fooled. It was exactly the same 5 years earlier. You and other Fianna Fáil TDs could boast to senior citizens over 70 that they would get medical cards automatically. That promise helped you to win power in that 2002 general election. Later, you thought that you could play ducks and drakes with those people. But that wasn't so, as it turned out. So perhaps it won't be so either with Mná na hÉireann. We'll have to wait now and see whether, women might think about this at some length, and let's see what they decide to do. I hear sports shops are having a roaring trades in single golf clubs this Christmas. With an election possible next year, you never know when one might come in handy to deal with men who break their promises, and maybe ask Tiger about it. You know, I have read.
Come back, Paul. You're so funny. Paul, don't go.
You know, I've read scores of articles by people who say that child benefit payments are of little importance to them. Journalists, academics, all say it would make no difference if the payment was restricted. Of course, most of these articles were written by men, and not one of them could ever say absolutely that they spoke for their wives or partners. I've yet to meet a mother of young or teenage children who casually says that child benefit has no importance to them. Now, maybe I don't mix in circles where the benefit is a trifle. I certainly don't represent a constituency that places no value on the advantages of universal child benefit. Almost every day I hear at the moment, and I'm sure everybody here does, the voice of Marion Finucane on radio ads for the Simon community. She tells us that the current crisis has brought community services to breaking point. I hear the same message from Professor John Monaghan from the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Are these societies lying? Is the Simon community faking its message this Christmas? Is the VDP out of touch? Are they saying that social welfare in Ireland is so generous that it can be cut? I have yet to hear a person who is genuinely in touch with ordinary families in the community who will say up front that social welfare in the Ireland of 2009 is excessively generous and ought to be cut. I'm telling you this, Minister Lenihan, that you looked in this budget for soft options, and you think that child benefit is a soft option. You think that social welfare recipients are soft options. Now, you had a choice. We have thousands of tax exiles in Ireland. These are super wealthy individuals. They boast of their contributions to charity and to good causes, which is all very, very admirable. But in a republic, it's not a substitute for paying your fair share of income tax. And I welcome insofar as it goes, but I noticed the very careful phrasing of the reference to the possibility of a levy on tax exiles. And we'll see when we see the finance bill. But we have bankers, God love them, we have poor bankers struggling through the business pages on the awfulness of 500,000 a year. They don't have to contribute anything extra that I can figure out in this budget. I'm not aware of where they make an extra contribution. You, Minister Lenihan, had a simple choice today. Who would you face down? Would it be the tax exiles? Would it be the poor old bankers on just 500,000 a year? Or would it be the mothers of Ireland? You made the choice, and it tells an awful lot about you, your values and your priorities. Child Benefit has been a success story. It did lift the most vulnerable group of children out of consistent poverty. And Fianna Fáil should be congratulated, and I congratulate you for the increases that you made in Child Benefit. And I think everybody does in the opposition. Child Benefit succeeded in lifting children out of poverty because there was no means test. Ireland did away with tax allowances for children many, many decades ago. Universal Child Benefit has been the principal policy in this country to help families with children, and the principal recognition by our society that raising children deserved financial support and recognition by our government. Because, as you know, in the tax code, one person with 2 children pays the same tax as one person with no children. A family, a couple with 3 children, pay the same tax as a couple with no children. But we recognise children through Child Benefit and the cost to their family of rearing them. So I am perplexed every time in the recent series of crises and budget adjustments and emergency measures, you as a minister, you seem to pick on children. You increased class sizes, you slowed down the building of schools, you slashed support for childcare, you abandoned plans for preschool education. We know that during all the years of our prosperity, we succeeded in lifting 1 child in every 5 who lived in consistent poverty in Ireland out of that poverty, from just below the poverty line to just above it. And that is an important success in this country, because we're not a terribly equal society. Income is distributed very high up, and then there's lots of people then congregated in very low levels of income. So, Minister, why dump a winning formula? Those who advocate social welfare cuts have it all back to front. Instead of cutting social benefits, we should protect them, especially for those on the bottom of the benefit scale. Indeed, in this crisis, precisely because it is universal and efficient, social welfare offers an immense advantage in a recovery strategy. And in the States, that's acknowledged by people in the Treasury and in the Federal Reserve, that social welfare spending is uniquely, for European economies, actually a stimulus package that keeps people on the very bottom able to spend. And what you've done today is cut their spending power over a very significant spectrum. €8 a week doesn't sound too much to people in here, but it's an awful lot to somebody who's a widow. And you know, €4 a week cut in Child Benefit doesn't sound too much in here, but it's an awful lot to people, you know, who are buying sliced pans and sausages as the mainstay of their trolley for shopping for their kids. And you know, when you go shopping, you can see the differential in different trolleys, who has the fresh meat and who has the sausages and the sliced pans, and piling it up in the trolley. And it's not a good day for the people with the cheaper trolley. And don't fool yourself that it is. It's going to be tough on them, and they will have to make hard choices about their children. Protecting benefits is simple, it's direct, it's progressive, and it's a highly efficient way to prevent poverty and sustain purchasing power for the vulnerable in our population. Reducing benefits will definitely save money. And on, a rough check there on your budget, 778 million of the cut of the 4 billion is out of the social welfare package. There's another about up to £500 million from education. So, these are the headings that are taking the brunt of today's cuts. It cannot be good for the economy that you cut purchasing power, and it's certainly not good for the health of our society at this point in time. Now, one thing that does scare me about the Minister, and that is that he seems to be crushed by economic dogma that essentially comes from the right. He's a pleasant guy, but he seems absolutely wedded to a very right-wing view of society and recovery. I prefer to think outside the box. The dogma that is coming at us day in, day out from the same people who cheered on the calamitous building boom for years and ignored the early signs of a warning of a banking collapse. I can't understand why it is that so many economists in Ireland deride the idea of stimulus. Why are many European economies showing some modest signs of recovery, while ours continues to lag behind? The Minister promised the last Fianna Fáil Ardèche that on his watch, Ireland would be the first country out of recession. Well, it hasn't happened, and it isn't going to happen. So why are we still deep in recession, with growth prospects stubbornly elusive? This is because our government policies are very much at variance with the formulas pursued by many others. Unlike countries that have poured money into consumer demand and public projects, our government has preferred to give our money to banks in the hope that some of it trickles through to the general economy and to businesses and enterprises. Trickle down, that old favourite tune of the right wing. It has not done so, and there is no prospect of any change in the bank policies. The Minister has a new committee, good luck to it. But I can tell you, Mr Boucher, Mr Sheehy, we met with them for several hours about 2 weeks ago. They stonewalled on every single demand from deputies in this House on all sides about credit flows. And I mean, Mr Sheehy was the most frank of them all because he was close to retirement. He just said it ain't going to happen. All that has happened is that bank debt has been converted into taxpayer debt with catastrophic effect on our sovereign debt capacity. All around Ireland, businesses are closing. Businesses need customers, but customers need confidence to get out and spend. Confidence is the most elusive but most vital ingredient of economic policy.